excellent.
Are we allowed to bring the animals to the conference?
Yes. I'm not even going to bother checking whether that's allowed, but we're in the hot seat. And John's brought a lovely guest for us this week, this month. John, over to you.
Yeah, so this is look at that, Naily. You got a proper page and everything. So yeah, we've got Naily with us today. We worked together back in 2019. It was with we were both with investors in People and doing some work there. And we've sort of stayed in touch ever since. Naily is a consultant. She's come from a sort of software engineering background, but has then gone through project management, product management, all manner of sort of business hustling and getting stuff done. But she also runs a podcast and for startup organizations, and tends to work with the sort of very, very small business in the early stages. Podcast is called the Mary Poppins of Mary Poppins of Startups. So I'll just share a link for that for you in chat. But I wanted to bring Naily along for a chat because I was kind of interested in understanding how sort of project management and PMO works when you've got small businesses and whether it's useful for them. And then I guess what we can learn from sort of these kind of entrepreneurs as well. So Naily, hi, how are you doing?
I'm all right, John. I'm all right. Definitely enjoying the sun in Madrid, so I can't even complain about that.
Oh, you're making me jealous now in cloudy Greenwich. I didn't want to hear how nice the weather was down your way. So obviously you work with a lot of sort of small businesses, and they tend to bring you in when they've got some sort of issues to solve with how they're delivering things or how they're organizing their projects. What sort of things do you see with those small businesses that a sort of PMO or project professional could help with?
I guess for me, one of the things I see the PMO can bring to startup is kind of the glue between all of the different parts of the organization, and not just the glue, but a way of getting them to slow down and understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, how to maximize it and benefit from it. Now, in another way, I could say helping them to increase the maturity level of the organizations and the way they run projects. What's tend to happen in startups, especially once they've landed a big round of funding, they need to start delivering to clients very quickly. They still need to work on internal project for the platform. It can be quite a mess. And this idea of managing projects, even for some people, they don't even really grasp the difference between BAU, right, and project work. And what does it actually mean? What is the impact on the resources? How do we learn from the way maybe one team could be doing something and then share it with the other ones? The other thing is a lot of tech startups really love the word agile without understanding how to do agile properly. And then agile doesn't actually mean a lack of planning. So when you speak to those companies, when they're first starting in tech is agile, okay, let's just go and do things. When they start to work with clients, they need to understand how can we adapt what we're doing in the way that we also need to work with clients. So I think there's a big, I always advise them whether it's a project manager that can help or someone with a PMO background that can come in, especially when they grow very quickly, even just as a consultancy can help them to really get their head around that as well. My favorite one, I think a bit of hand holding will be quite nice because, you know, we all work with projects. So for us, we kind of know how to start thinking ahead and risks and other things. Most people, they think that they've planned, but they always plan on the best case scenario, which is great. But life doesn't go according to the best case scenario. So this idea of even helping with risk planning, which for me is something that I will think very, very quickly. For others, they might not. And the second part is dead documentations. So you get teams that get excited, they're pumped up, they go in a meeting, they plan, they've got their risks, they've got all of the assessment, everything that they've done, decisions, all of that. But nobody slows down to go and update documentations. And later on, the same thing is being discussed many times. There's no records of it. And whenever you try to introduce that, you get a bit of a, we busy kind of mentality. So it's how do you explain to them that this idea of managing project is not to turn your organization into like, implementing full PMP or Prince2, but to get the best processes from all of that into your organization so that you can actually move faster, even if you think that it will slow you down. So yes, for me, those are the key things. The one thing I could also add is a bit of accountability, especially at the beginning of the process. there's this thing about we've always done it this way. We've always delivered to our customers that way, right? That's all well and good. But if you are getting a large number of customers and things are not going well, especially if you're working on an integration project, so you have some teams that work on a data science part, some teams that work on implementations, and they not usually talk to each other. And having someone that comes with the mindset of what is it that the business needs, and then look into why are they doing this way? Is there a better way of doing that? And again, sharing information within the team can even streamline the projects. And well, at the end of the day, they save more money because of that.
Wow. So I'm curious. I mean, loads of stuff there really resonated, especially the idea of sort of being the glue that holds it all together in those organizations. But one thing, when you talked about sort of helping them sort of slow down in order to then end up going faster, what kind of reaction do you get when you go into a small business and you look at what they're doing and they feel they need to do more, and your first conversation is, okay, we need to slow down, we need to do some documentation, we need some structure? Well, what sort of reaction do you tend to get to that?
Frustration, of course, which makes sense. Why the hell should I slow down when I've got, tons of other things to do? And I guess, I've had that in one of the company I work for, they actually delivered to a client, and it was a bit of a headache because they needed to continue improving the platform specifically for that client, yet they had no resources, and they didn't even understand how we built the platform in the first place, because all of the latest resources was based on another version of the platform. So it's really about a bit of coaching, talking to the leaders of different teams, explaining the pros and cons and the benefits. And also, especially when I have the chance to work with the client, also have the negotiation to explain to them, the project is now being late, right? So another good thing is definitely looking at data of how we've been running projects, how long is it taking, why is it that you're doing the same thing? Well, technically doing the same thing because you're meant to be integrating with other platforms. You're doing it over and over again, yet you never reach any of your targets that you've described. Some of them don't even know that they've never paid attention to the metrics that goes on with delivering or running a project. So trying to work with them and get as much metrics as I can, or the reasons why there's the lack of metrics could be impacting them, and showing them, really helps. Goes back to what you're talking earlier about the dashboard and visualization. I try to find as many example things that they can feel and see and to explain why we need to slow down. Then when it comes to documentation part of it, it's definitely not the case of let's drop everything and document. Is whether we start documenting from where we are today and going forward, or going backwards. So the way I would put it, especially if we do kind of sprints, I would say, okay, how about we do a sprint work for 1 week where we have X amount of time designated for that. We work as a team, turning into a bit of a game, getting people to have this sense of we're doing it together helps to have a bit more buy-in. But yes, you're always going to get a pushback at the beginning.
But then you eventually get that kind of light bulb moment where they suddenly see, actually, by doing that and narrowing our focus on things, you actually do tend to start seeing them hitting their goals, and then that realization comes in, which is amazing. Yeah. Can we flip this around, because we've got a lot of PMO people on the call. We've been talking about what you can do and how we bring some of the PMO stuff into these small businesses to help them sort of slow down to speed up, as it were. But what about the other way around? What can we as PMO people learn from these startups, from these entrepreneurs that are spinning up these small companies and going fast? Is there anything that we as professionals can take away from how they run their businesses?
Yeah, I would definitely say being more agile and really promoting a bit more innovation. When I first started my journey in project management as technical project manager, I was working at Siemens, and it was actually very interesting when they started running large projects across continents and across different teams. You could see that every single team worked differently, and there's very little awareness of what is it that you even do as a team in the first place. And especially when you have projects where teams work together, I feel like, how can PMOs help? Because PMOs, depending on the organization, you might have different groups of PMOs, or you have one that looks over the whole thing. So you have an overview and understanding of the pain points of each teams. Those teams will need to communicate and work with each other. But is there a way where, as I was mentioning, PMO being the glue, to really bring them together to speed up innovation? and to remove like the I mean, documentation and our processes are great, but sometimes, how can we have that in mind as we're moving forward? I think another thing, was Linda, you mentioned this continuous improvement aspect of things. I think that is also very important. How do we experiment based on the way that we work? And how do we share information that we know has worked for maybe one PMO in this part of the organization to transfer to the other PMO, even if on the surface of things you think the industry may be very different, or what they do is different. By the end of the day, the best practices are the same, and there's a lot you can learn. But of course, in large organizations, silos get created very quickly. So I believe that helping break the silos, bringing people together really is very important. I guess one example, I think, John, remember when we worked together on investments in people, one of the biggest issues was product and marketing departments. Even when they were planning together, they were not really talking about how they work. Why is this important to us? Why is it that as product people, we need to have marketing assistance for a certain part of our project? So when I got the role, one of the sessions I was, let's come in, let's learn what marketing do. What are your processes? How do you track projects? We learn from you and you learn from us. That helped my team, the product team, to think, okay, well, we need to let marketing know way in advance. How can we put that information in our plans? Because we always assume that whenever we need something, we just talk to marketing and says, by the way, we need it in a couple of weeks. I'm like, well, they also have a life and other things that they do as part of their projects, right? So having that way of really getting the teams to talk to each other, which I know the other question is, again, time. How do we do that? But I think that is something that I've seen works a lot better in small organizations, but the bigger the organization, the more difficult it is. And that's where PMO could make a difference. So
you'd say if somebody was working maybe in an IT PMO, we'd be saying actually go out, meet your marketing, we seem to stick with marketing, but go out and meet the marketing team, find out what they do, what makes them tick and what's important to them, because it will help you help your project managers, help your projects running. And then it's coming back to that word you used earlier, that being that glue that kind of holds the organization together, right?
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. So I'm curious if anyone on here has actually done that, come out of their department and sort of parachuted into another one to get a feeling for what they're doing. I'd love you to tell us about it in the chat. We often view the PMO as being the ones that like gather reports and share reports, but what you're actually talking about is building relationships between people. Would you say that's kind of a core thing that the PMO should be doing, building those relationships and building those internal networks in organizations?
Yeah, I feel so. I mean, even when I wear my hat as a project manager, I think sometimes when we talk about, PMOs, there is a lot of emphasis on the paperwork, which again, as I say, is important, especially when we talk about the maturity of a company. Without the paperwork, paper trail, it can get messy. But I think the strength for me lies in the people aspect of things, being able to motivate them, being able to share knowledge, being able to get them to work in different ways, where there's a lot of negotiation involved. And I'm sure many of you have felt the pain of working with different teams or larger teams and all of those kind of things. And I think that's the part of PMOs that people need to shout out more, and value more. It's easy to see things breaking when there's nothing, but once you bring PMOs involved and things start going well, people get, complacent because they don't understand what you guys have been doing in the background and running like crazy to get everything to work really well. So then you cut out PMOs and then things go bad and you wonder, what just happened? I'm like, well, where do we start,
Yeah, absolutely with you. It's I'm just keeping a conscious eye on time as well, because I could talk about this for hours. But I love that idea of the bringing negotiation skills and all those kind of ideas. And so I guess that's something we can get from entrepreneurs, that idea of bringing people together, building up our negotiation skills and trying to take people forward in sort of one direction. Are there any, if we could bring it down to sort of, I guess, what if we had sort of one tip that we could give to PMO people that they should take away from this, from the entrepreneurial mindset, what would it be? One tiny one-liner to take away?
I would say experiments. even when things are going well. You know, because the world moves very quickly. There's always new technology. You know, when you talk about dashboard, John, when I met you, you were using the tools that by now I'm sure new tools have come out. So there's always room for experimentation, as again is the way to push innovation forward.
I love that. I mean, I love experimentation, but I love that the important point you made there: experiment even when things are going well, because I think so often in the PMO world we can get to the point where we believe we've got the processes just right, everything, and then we relax. And as you say, a year down the line, people have moved on, the tools, the technology have moved on, new things have come in, the organization is working differently. And that's where if the PMO isn't continuously experimenting, isn't, to go back to Lindsay's point, doing that continuous improvement, you suddenly end up with a PMO that's not aligned with the business anymore and can even be holding it back, which is where we suffer. Naily, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing those insights. We've got you on screen again there. The link to the podcast is there. If you want to reach out to Naily and connect directly, I've just shared her LinkedIn in the chat there, so do reach out to her. She is lovely and full of fascinating insights into not just PMO stuff, but actually working with entrepreneurs and small businesses as well. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, and
thanks for having me.
I think the key word there as well in the chat is the energy. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We all need that. I think we're all needing a bit of that. Well, I certainly am needing a bit of that today. So great to have that. Contagious.
Thank you very much.